Hello, Jessica here, and welcome to my. Hello, Jessica here, and welcome to my storybook. A book called Dog Whisper. Rescue. Today, I'm going to be reading chapter 7 and chapter 8, and this is the part 4 in this book. Last time I read on the part 3, chapter 5, and then chapter 6 in this book, and I'm going to read here tonight. This is part 4, and I will be reading chapter 7 and chapter 8. Chapter 7. What do we do? Emily asked, feeling pinky. Go get as much glue as you can find. Her mother said, we'll just try to protect it until we can get him to the vet. Emily races upstairs and grabbed all the first aid supplies she could find in the medicine cabinet. She handed them to her mother, who gently spread some layers of glue over the wounds. Then she covered him with a thick, dry bench towel. The dog stayed on his side, shivering and panting. His chest was moving irregularly up and down, and Emily saw her parents exchange an uneasy glance. She looked up at the kitchen clock and saw that it was just past 6:30. How soon can we call Dr. K? She asked. Dr. K, short from Kozlowski, with the vanillin, her mother forward, and also a check at the clock. Not for the hour or so at least. I don't think. It's awful early. Can we take him to the regular hospital instead, for people? Emily asked right away. Her father shook his head. I'm sorry, I don't think they will let us bring him into the ER. Let me go send Dr. K an email now. Though, in case he checks it before he goes to the office and wants to call us. I'll see if I can find a 24-hour clinic in Portland or someplace, too. It was awful just to sit and watch the dogs struggling to breathe without being able to help. He was still trembling from the cold and probably in shock, too. So her mother spilled another towel on top of him. Why don't you go get the heating pad? She suggested. And then we'll put it between the towels so he can warm it up a little more. Emily was happy to have a significant task. It took a couple of minutes, but she found the heating pad up in the long closet and brought it downstairs. Her mother set it up as definitely as she could, but the dog still whimpering a little just from having the towels adjusting on top of him. Then he settled down and resumed the loud, raspy breathing. Should I get him some water? Emily asked. Her mother shook her head. We can't be sure that he isn't bleeding intensely, maybe just a little. Emily found a small metal mixing bowl with water and carried it over. No, wait, her mother said quickly. I gave it to him. She knew the dog wasn't going to bite. Knew it deep in her bones, but she presidentially handed the bowl to her mother. Her mother carefully set the bowl next to the dog's muzzle, and he wagged his tail once. He didn't lift his head. Maybe with like a turkey beast. Emily asked, did it want a turkey beast or an eyedropper or something? In a little while, we can try that, her mother said, and went into the pantry to get a can of beef stock. Or maybe we should start him with some warm broth. I don't think we should do anything more than that, Dot. until we can get him to the vet. It seems to be it seems to be taking him forever to come back, but she assured her that her father was doing some quick results on the internet about how to take care of injured pets and all of the important steps on steps to take. He was probably already printing out pages of instructions and advice. And even and since she was little, Emily had always read lots of books about animals. One thing she had learned was that they sometimes knew and understood that people didn't, that most animals were naturally wise. She wasn't sure if everything she had read was true, but it was all really interesting. What she sees from the dog right now was that he wanted to stay very, very still and conserve his energy. So she sat quietly, too, right next to him, cross-legged on the floor, with her hands floating in her lap. Why don't you go upstairs and put on something dry? Her mother said. Emily looked down and realized that her clothes were dripping so much water that she was now sitting in a puddle. She went out to her room and changed into a sweatpants and pink turtleneck, wool, thick wood socks, and sneakers. She hadn't realized how cold she had gotten from jumping into the ocean and being out in the rain for so long, and it turned out that her knee was pretty badly bruised, too. She couldn't even imagine how cold the dog must be feeling. Josephine followed her downstairs and stopped dead in her tracks when she saw the dog lying on the floor. Emily went ahead and sent her to haste and tear out of the room, but she took several yes, steps in her direction, steps in his direction. Then the sniffing at the towers covering him, sniffing at his muzzles, and tore out of the room. Here, Emily's mother said, and handed her a mug of hot chocolate. Emily was still cold and accepting it gratefully. Thank you, she said, and sat back down on the floor next to the dog. Her mother had already heated some broth, and Emily held the bowl close to the dog's nose so that he could smell it. He actually cracking one of his ears and looked altered for the first time, so she moved the bowl to more comfortable angle, and he drank a little and spilled even more. Then he must have gotten tired because he sighed and let his head slump down again. I wish he had a collar, her mother said. Then he would call his owners and let them know that we'd find him. Emily hadn't even considered the fact that the dog might have a bone. She had just ultimately assured that he was a stray. But he's so thin, she said. I don't think he belongs to anyone. And if he did have owners, they should have taken much better care of him and not let him get lost. He, her father came in with a whole bunch of printer out information he had found online, as well as the address of the nearest 24-hour vet entry clinic, which was more than 50 miles away. Did you call the Animal Medical Casino? Her mother asked. The Animal Medical Casino was a famous animal hospital in New York City, and she and her mother both knew that her father was pretty convinced that New York was always the best place to get correct answers. Well, yes, her father admitted. They said I should bring him to a vet right away. Her mother checked the clock on the wall again. If we leave now, it's going to take us about an hour to get there. So I think we should wait for Dr. K, too. Just then, the telephone rang. When her father answered, Emily can tell right away that the vet, Dr. K, was on the other end. Her father answered quick questions, listened to the full instructions, and then bent down to look at the dog's mouth. Yes, he said into the receiver. I'm afraid his gums are quite pale. He listened for another minute, and then he held the telephone near the dog's head. Near the dog's head. Probably so that the vet could hear the way he was breathing. Then her father lifted the telephone back up to his ear and listened again. Yes, right away. Thank you. He hung up the phone. Okay, he's going to meet us over there with a couple of his technicalities. It took about 10 minutes to get the dog safely out to the car. Actually, they have two cars, her mother's Porsche and her father's old circular wagon. But her parents had already decided that it would be easier to try and transfer the dog and the sober since it was bigger. Her father left one in the seal when Emily and her mother carried the other side. They had to walk very slowly, both because the dog was heavy and because they didn't want to jar him at all. Once they had made it out to the driveway, Emily went ahead to open the door so that her parents could ease the child onto the back seat. Her parents agreed to let her sit in the back to keep the dog company. They were probably still a little worried that she might get bitten, but by now the dog seemed to be half conscientious and wouldn't be able to bite her, even if he wanted to, which Emily knew he didn't. Once she had snapped on her seat belt, once she had snapped on her seat belt, she put her hand very lightly on top of the blanket, then the dog's shoulder. He moved his head just enough to rest it on her leg, and she patted him during the entire ride. When they pulled into the parking lot of Oceanside Animal Hospital, Dr. K was waiting outside, wearing a white lab coat over a polo shirt and jeans. He was a very tall man with a beard and glasses. He looked sort of like the menacing version of a lumberjack. Two of the ancestors were there, too, holding a stretcher. As soon as they saw the car, they all rolled over, Emily gal, so that Dr. K could lean into the back seat and perform a very fast explanation. He used his stethoscope to check the dog's heart and lungs and find slightly. Then he lifted the blankets to look the dog over, felt his ribs cage and leg, and forward again. Let, let's get him right inside right away, he said to the two technicalities. The pronunciation is critical. Working together, Dr. K and his assistants eased the dog and his blankets out of the car and direct onto the stretcher. Then they rushed into the office. When Emily's father held the door for them, there was no time to lose. We're going to take him into the back and have a closer look, okay? Dr. K said, silent and very urgent. I'll come out here and talk to you as soon as I know anything. Emily was pretty sure that almost 12 was too old to cry in public, but she definitely felt like it shouldn't be in there with him. so he won't be scared. Dr. K shook his head. No, I'm sorry. It'll be easier right now if we wait out here. But I promise that we're going to do anything we can for him. What that? With that, he and the tent and the dog disappeared through the swinging doors into the surgeon air. Emily and her parents stood in the middle of the empty room. Well, we're in the right place, Emily's mother said, and he's an excited vet, so we know the dog's in good hands. Emily nodded, and then sat down in a row of the chairs to wait. When her father leaned his head back against the wall and closed his eyes, Emily remembered that none of them had gotten much sleep. It wasn't even 8 in the morning yet, but she felt as though she had been awake for about a week and a half, almost the only times she had ever been to the vet's office were for Josephine's regular checkups, the time they had brought her in to be sprayed, and once a few months early when she had gotten an upper respiratory infection after Emily had made up her mind that she wanted to be a host, veterinarian herself someday. Dr. K had invited her to spend a couple of afternoons watching the vets and their assistants to do routine exams and producers. It had been very interesting, and she had always hoped that when she was old enough, she would be able to get some kind of part-time job in the office, working with all the animals. But this time was different. Now they were here with an injured dog who she already loved, and he might be too badly hurt to survive. Chapter 8. They sat in the waiting room for what seemed like a really long time. Since the office wasn't officially open yet, it was very quiet. The overhead lights were off, which made Emily feel very sleepy, but she forced herself to stay awake. Her mother held her hand, which normally might have been have made her feel a little babyless, but under the circumstances, she didn't mind at all. Right before 9 o'clock, the office manager and one of the assistants arrived and was surprised to find people already there. As they turned on the office computers and began to set up for the day's appointments, an older woman showed up with a black and white cat who needed his lonely shots, and a stalking red-haired man with a booming voice came in with a small voice calling powder. The other clients seemed to be nice, but it was hard to wait for what might be bad news in front of the strangers. Emily sat very straight in her chair the whole time, shaking her head when her mother would fill her a magazine and shaking it again when her father suggested going out to get some donuts and milk or anything else that she might like for breakfast. Finally, Dr. Kozlowski came out through those swinging doors. He had changed into green surgical scrubs and looked very solemn. Normally, he always had a big smile on his face, so it was ominous to see his expression so serious. He nodded hello to the woman with the cat and the man with the with the paddle, and then turned to Emily and her parents. Why don't we go step into another room to take for a minute? He suggests. Just hearing that was enough to make Emily's stomach sink, but she pushes herself to her feet as her parents stood up too. Would you like to be in there with us, or would you rather have me talk to your parents alone first? Dr. Kazanowski asked. And now, please, Emily said. Without hesitating, Dr. Kazanowski glanced at her parents, who nodded recollectionally. He motioned for them to follow him into the exam room. Emily swore, knowing that he must, he must have bad news if he wanted to speak to them improperly. But she took a deep breath and followed her parents into the small room. It was maybe Dom, but she had accepted that the dog would be in there on the examinable table, waiting for them, only he wasn't. Once they were inside, Dr. Casanasi quietly closed the door. Well, he said, and Emily could see that he looked tired, or maybe just sad. We're doing everything we can, but I'm afraid he is not in very good shape. He has several broken ribs and one down posterior in his lungs. Although we were able to get it reinflated, his left fungula has a compound fracture, and one of his hips was displaced too. We're giving him lots of fluids to try to make up for the blood loss and then the aberration, but I'm very concerned about his kidney fraction. We had him stabilized for now, but there's still some internal bleeding, and I'm going to have to do more surgery to locate the sources. But if the damage is as extreme as I suspect it might be, I'm not sure that will be anything more than temporary effects. Emily wasn't completely sure what all of that meant, other than the fact that it sounded really bad. He's uh he's really thin, she said, mostly because she couldn't think of anything else to say. Dr. Kasanowski nodded. I think he must have been out there on his own for quite some time because he is very weak and moralist. That will make it much harder for him to fight off any infections. And I'm also maybe holding the beginning of some pneumonia setting in. He's, well, it's really not a good apologize. He's sighing. I'm sorry that I don't have better news. It was very, very quiet in the room for a minute, and Emily had to blink hard, over and over, to keep from crying. Do you think we should? Emily's father stopped in mid sentence. I mean, it sounds as thought we may have a very difficult decision to make. Dr. Kasanowski let out his breath, and looked sadder than ever. Yes, he said unhappily. I'm afraid you do. Emily stared at her father accusingly when she realized that he was talking about putting the dog to sleep. We can't do that, Dad, she said. We can't do that, Dad, she said. It will be, we have to see him. Why do you just wait to give up? It's not giving up, her father said, but he's terribly sick, and it doesn't sound as though we should put him through any more of this. To her, that sounded a whole lot like giving up. Besides, he wasn't sick. He was injured, which was different, and he could get well. She was sure, she was sure he could get better if they would just give him time to do it. Her brother put him on around her. I know it's very hard, Emily. But we have to think about what's best for him, no matter how sad it will make us. Why did her parents always have to be so reasonable? Emily wanted to yell at her, at all of them, but she just darkened underneath her mother's arms and focused down at the floor. Instead, she shouldn't have gone into the room with them. If they weren't even going to let her be part of that decision, her parents always said that they wanted to hear her opinion. But sometimes it seems like they only meant it if she agreed with them. Her father came over to try and give her a hug, and she shook her head, stepping out of the way. At this particular moment, she didn't want either of them to be nice to her. In fact, she pretty much just wanted to be left alone. There was a folding shelf in the corner, near the small refrigerator, where the vet stored medication and sometimes sodas, and she went over and sat down in it. The chair was angled so that she was facing away from all of them, which was totally fine with her. Nobody said anything for a moment. Her mother was the first one to break the silence. Dr. K is treating him any further the right thing to do. Dr. Kasanowski signed. To be honest, I'm not sure. I'd like to give him every possible chance, but it may not be. He signed again. This is a very difficult situation. His injuries are so severe that I'm not sure he can recover, and there's a good chance that he'll be permanently impotent if he does. And there's and that's if we get lucky and there are no other complications at best. He will have very long repercussions, and he might not even be able to walk confidently. All of that was probably true, but then why had the dog seemed so alive, so happy to be rescued? But he worked so hard, Emily said quietly, still sitting in a folding chair, all by himself. You know, to make sure that someone will find him. That means he wants us to try and save him. Dr. Kaczynowski nodded. Les, I think you're probably right. You're probably right, Emily. That's what makes these decisions so complicated. We just don't know a lot of the time. That was a good answer because it made her feel as though her opinion was going to be taken seriously. She didn't want the dog to be in pain or to do anything that would make it harder for him. But just letting him go felt all wrong. So she turned around in her chair to look at Dr. Konstantinsky directly. What would you do if he was low dog? She asked. I really don't know. Dr. Kaczynowski folded his arms and leaned back against the wall to think about that. His prognosis is very poor, but he's also clearly quite long, and the fact that he's surviving this long tells me that he's usually strong and determined. He paused. It's not a decision I can make for the three of you, but I can tell you that he's as comfortable as we can make him right now. So I think we could just watch him very closely for the rest of the day and see how he responds. Then we can talk again. Emily was definitely in favor of that, and fortunately, her parents agreed too. So they went back to the waiting room and sat and sat and sat some more. Other clients came in and out for the opponents, and it was and it was noisy, as cats complaining inside their carriers and dogs barking at each other. After a while, her father left to go pick up some lunch for all of them. Emily was beginning to feel really constipated in the waiting room. So she decided to go outside for a while and get some fresh air. She never would have guessed that sitting and doing nothing could be so completely thrilling. Like most places in Bailey's Court, the animal hospital was right by the ocean and had its own little dock. Sometimes, especially when the snow was so deep that it was difficult to dive, Dr. K and his assistants would pay house calls by boat. It was still rainy and so chilly that it felt more like late fall than summer. She had left her slicker in the waiting room, but getting wet seemed more appealing than going back inside. Emily walked across the parking lot and then down the net, grabbing the path to the dock. He, her knee was still kind of stuffed, but it didn't hurt that much, and she only limping a little. There was a bunch of big rocks formations along the side of the path, and she decided to climb up on top of one of them. The ground was so wet that her sneakers was slipping a little, but she was able to pull herself up without too much trouble. Then she sat down, staring out at the ocean. This part of town was in a protector cove, so even during the storms, the water was usually pretty calm. Today, it looked dark gray, and tiny waves slipping gently against the dock every so often. Because of the water, they didn't seem to be any plaza boats out, which was really unusual in August. A few stray soldiers swooping around, looking for food, and she saw a loon, too. Other than that, it looked like a quiet autumn day. Sitting alone on the rock was private, and so she let herself quiet a little. She knew Dr. K and his assistants were trying to do anything they could to save the dog, but it didn't sound as though it was going to work. Neither of her parents was really into the idea of pets, especially her father, but they had always had at least one cat. Because Emily had been crazy about animals as far back as she could remember. She loved Josephine, who they had had for about 5 years, and couldn't imagine life without her. But she had always wanted a dog, too. It was almost excited a month until her birthday, and after she had knocked at them pretty much nonstop for the past day or two, her parents had promised her that they would talk seriously about going over to the animal shelter and picking one out. But she wanted this dog. It was maybe stupid to feel so attached to the animal she had only known for a couple of hours, but she did. She felt connected every time he had looked at her with those sad, deep brown eyes. It had seemed as though he somehow knew everything that she was thinking and feeling. She couldn't stand the thought of losing this dog, but right now there wasn't anything she can do to help him. All she can do was hope. That was the end of this chapter 7 and chapter 8 of the book called Dog Rescue. The Rescue. Tomorrow I will be reading chapter 9 and chapter 10 of this book. Until then, I'm Charles Crudup. Had a great time, and I'll see you tomorrow. And God bless.